I have recently made some changes to my medieval LEGO armies, so I thought I'd make an update video for all of them and also do a little tour of my medieval mocks and sets. The last time I did this was way at the beginning of the year, so I want to show you all what the armies look like now. This is going to be a very chill overview of my medieval LEGO collection as it stands at the end of 2024, so I hope you enjoy. I'd also like to thank Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, but more on them later. So I think it makes sense for us to start with the newest army in my collection, the Order of the White Dragon. That's what I've decided on calling these guys because the name Blue Dragons just felt a little too plain for them. These guys are probably my favorite new army in the collection. Don't get me wrong, the Ravens are still my all-time favorites, but these figs are just everything you want from a LEGO knight. They've got an insane level of detail with the prints on the arms and legs, but you already know that. The main thing I've done differently with them is I've incorporated a few of the parts from the 2013 Lion Knights. These parts just go really well with them. This torso, for example, matches perfectly with the new legs, and I plan on getting some more of these old parts to flesh out the army even more. The only problem is, these D&D packs are really hard to find right now. I got a bunch of them before they released, but I haven't found any since. So who knows how large this army will get, but I'm hoping to have around 25 to 30 in total, but again, who knows. The main force is made up of a lot of melee units, with unique weapons to diversify them. I've also flipped the torso around on some of them, again to just get some more variety in there. The longer I've been army building, the more I crave variety in my armies, and I think I did a pretty good job of that with these guys. I've also got a small group of archers and crossbowmen, but I will hopefully be getting a few more of them soon. Finally, our last figure is the leader of the order. He's a simple looking fig, but the blue cape that he's got helps him stand out. I really love how this army is shaping out, and I can't wait to start building some mocks for them. Next, let's take a look at my new and improved Fright Knights. This is the other new army that everyone's been army building in 2024, and I recently changed mine up quite a lot actually. Now, the Fright Knights have been one of my favorite factions for a while now, and when the CMF came out in January, I was so excited to army build them. But I think my previous attempts at it were a little boring, to be honest. Most of my soldiers wore the exact same helmets and just didn't feel like a real army, if that makes sense. So with that said, I've tried to throw in some more variation with each of them. For example, the bulk of my army used to all wear the basic nasal helmet in black. Now they all wear a mix of nasal helms, great helms, and this one that I don't actually know what to call exactly. This makes them look a lot more realistic to me, and I've also tried to make it so that they all have different weapons as well. The next step in this is to accessorize them all, which I've started to do by giving them some capes and printed helmets from Cult Bricks. One of my new favorite knights in this army is this guy, who's got the tournament helmet and a gold cutlass attached to his hip. This sheath piece is so underrated, and I really want LEGO to bring something like this back, because this piece is really rare nowadays. Again, my goal with updating all of my armies is to make them feel more alive. Previously, they just felt too basic. It's not like this is a clone army where it makes sense for all of them to be roughly the same, so that brings me to the archers. I have completely changed them from my previous videos. I still have this guy who uses the CMF as the base, but the other three archers all now use Lion Knight torsos backwards and have some dual molded legs. I really love how this torso works for the Fright Knights, and I think it makes sense to outfit my archers with them. So I am planning on ordering a bunch more of these Lion Knight torsos and gray arms to expand them out. Finally, we have the leaders of the Fright Knights. Here's Basil, who is completely unchanged from previous videos because I think he looks great as is. But I have a brand new version of Willow the Witch that I just made. Willow was a pretty big part of the original theme, so I wouldn't be too surprised if we got an official version of her sometime in the future, but for now, I am really happy with the version that I came up with. I leaned into the wacky possessed witch look with her face print, and I've also given her a hood instead of a hat. I've also tried to make her look more battle ready than the original, and I think the backwards custom torso from K-Town works pretty well here. I've also used the new dress piece from the D&D CMF, which I think combines well with basically any red torso that you have, and I'm really happy with how this custom Willa ended up looking. Now, before we take a look at my Red Falcons, I want to briefly ask you what you think about this idea that I had. My Red Falcons are a very small force compared to, say, like my Ravens or Fright Knights, so I thought about maybe adding them to my Fright Knight army. The red capes on their torso obviously match well with the Fright Knight color scheme, and they would be really easy to modify and add to my Fright Knights. But on the other hand, I really love the lore that I made for them, and I wouldn't want to completely get rid of them, so I don't know. Let me know what you think about the idea in the comments because I'm really torn on it. Anyways, let's now take a look at those red falcons. These guys are... Oh my god, is that who I think it is? Would you look at that? It's the shark from Surfshark VPN. Thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Now, I've been using VPNs on and off for a couple of years now, and Surfshark is the best one I've ever used. I'm a pretty big movie guy, and I have a decent collection of Blu-rays, but one of my favorite films, About Time, isn't in my collection, and it's unavailable to stream in the US. Thankfully with Surfshark, I can just change my location over to the UK, and now I have access to it and a ton of other British shows that I love. This is what I have always liked about VPNs. It lets you access so much more content that may just not be obtainable in your country. But Surfshark isn't just great for finding international content, it's also a great way to stay safe when browsing the internet. Their VPN encrypts your data and hides your information when using public Wi-Fi networks. Surfshark also comes with their own built-in ad blocker that, in my opinion, is a must-have. It works way better than any free ad blocker I've used in the past, and I couldn't be happier with it. One of the best things about their ad blocker, and the VPN in general, is that you can use it on all of your devices with just one account. Other VPNs that I've used in the past have limited the amount of devices that you can use on one account, but with Surfshark, I can use it on my PC, phone, and TV without worrying about going over any arbitrary limit. You can go to surfshark.com/goldfire to get an extra 4 months of Surfshark. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, but now let's get back to the Red Falcons. So this is the smallest army of mine next to the orcs, but I still love them a ton. The simple dark red and silver color scheme is super classy, and like I said, the backstory that I crafted for them I just love. There's not really anything that special or unique about these guys, but they just look great, and obviously having a Red Falcon faction is just really novel. I'm genuinely surprised that LEGO has only released these torsos in Build-A-Minifigure stations, because they really deserve to get their own set. The main two characters that I made for them are brother and sister, and they're still some of my favorite custom knights that I've ever made. There's just something about the knight and squire dynamic that is so classic, and I should really make a castle for these guys at some point. Now, next up, we have everyone's favorite, the Black Falcons. The last time you saw my Black Falcon army, it was in a bit of a sorry state, but now I have really cleaned them up. Starting first, we have my four, more important characters, if that makes sense. The king and queen are exactly the same as before, and so is this guy. They haven't changed. But I have taken some of your advice and given the dwarf-looking warrior some mid-legs. It definitely suits his character way better than before, and I am super happy with how he looks now. It almost makes me want to make a small group of dwarf Black Falcons, but I don't have that many pairs of mid-legs, so I don't know. Now again, like I said, my goal with updating all of my armies is to make them feel more realistic and diverse. So with my Black Falcon archers, I've given each of them a different kit. They all use the same base of the Falconer CMF, but use different bows, hoods, and even quivers. I think they look a lot more natural like this, and I've also given some of them regular hairpieces instead of having them all wear hoods. Overall, I think this is a massive improvement to them, and I don't really think I need to make that many more Falcon archers at this point. Though I would like to have some Falcon crossbowmen eventually, I just don't have enough kettle helms for them at the minute. Now, if you remember in the last update, a lot of my Black Falcons weren't wearing any helmets, and that's because I couldn't decide if I wanted to switch from Pearl Dark Gray to black armor. Well, I finally made up my mind, and I've given the bulk of my soldiers regular black helmets. I still much prefer the Pearl Dark Gray ones, but they're just way too expensive to outfit all of my Falcons. I still am using the Pearl Dark Gray Great Helms on my Heavy Knights. I just couldn't resist it, and I'm pretty happy with this compromise. As for my future plans for this army, I would really like to make some horsemen for them, so that's next on my list, along with getting a couple of crossbowmen. Okay, so before we take a look at my ravens, I'd like to blaze through a couple of these smaller armies that are in my collection. So my green dragons are now one of my favorite factions in my collection. I feel like I've been saying that a lot, but it's true. I've completely redesigned these guys, and I really like the new look that they've got. I went in and tried to make them feel a bit more naturalistic. For example, this guy's holding a banner that's made from a carved tree branch, and their leader is wearing some almost Forestman-esque armor. I don't think I've ever seen anyone else take this aesthetic for them, but I really love how it ended up looking. I almost want to try and turn them into a pseudo-Forestman faction, and really just go further in this new direction. The look is just really unique compared to all of my other factions, so we'll see what I come up with when I get some more parts for these guys. It's definitely got me wanting to make a fortress mock for them. Now, the red dragons, on the other hand, are a lot more plain looking. Don't get me wrong, I like these guys fine, but they just aren't as interesting as the green dragons for me. I do love how their commander looks though. This silver printed helmet from Cultbricks just matches this guy so well. But other than that, these guys are pretty basic. Another one of my favorite factions that's on the smaller side is the Orcs. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of these guys, but I do plan on getting them up to around 15 to 20 in size. I have got a lot of planned mocks and ideas for the Orcs, so I won't bring them up in this video, but these guys will be getting a lot more love from me in 2025, especially these sand green ones from the early 2000s. And our last two small factions are the Forestmen and the Lion Knights. These two factions, I've said it before, they're just not for me. I didn't grow up with these factions, so I've got zero nostalgia for them, and in my opinion, even the new versions of them don't look that good. They just aren't my style, but I do get why people like them. They're very classically Lego, but they just don't really do it for me. And they really don't fit in with my other factions. If I had more of the Kingdoms era Red Lions, I would definitely use those, but all the other Lion factions just kinda suck. Anyways, now that we've taken a look at all these small factions, let's take a look at my all-time favorite, the Raven Knights. Continuing with the theme of variety and diversifying my armies, I have done a lot to really personalize each figure in this army. Starting first, we have the Footmen. They all now carry different weapons and have some different accessories on each of them. I really love this guy who's got a spear as his secondary and a short rapier type sword as his main. These guys used to all carry regular spears, and it just felt too clone-like. I much prefer how they look now, and they feel more like actual soldiers with their own unique personalities and preferences in weaponry. I've also done a similar thing with my heavy Raven Knights. Before, these fellas all had regular great helms and the exact same sword copy and pasted 6 times. They looked cool, but again, just not very realistic. Now I've given them a larger variety of helmets by including the Viking ones that work so well with the lore for my Ravens, and I've also given one of them this tourney helmet. This alone makes them feel a lot more varied and interesting to look at, but I've also switched up their weapons as well. I still wanted them to mostly be using swords, but I've given them a greater variety in types of swords, and I've also given one of them an axe. You may also notice that I have a whole nother figure that wasn't in the last video. That's right, I bought another Raven Knight. I got a good deal on him because he was missing the shield, but I don't think I'm ever gonna buy another one of these guys. I'm really happy with the amount that I have, but I just couldn't pass up on getting another one for the price that I found him at. These guys are just way too expensive to buy. Don't buy the Raven Knights. Please don't buy the Raven Knights. They're too expensive. It's not worth it. Anyways, next let's take a look at the main characters of the army. Most of them are the same as before, but I have finally recreated the Raven Queen minifigure that has been absent from this army for like over a year now. And here she is. I've taken the new dwarf torso and given it some pearl dark gray arms and combined it with these barbarian legs. I think it ended up looking really nice, but I still do want to try out this torso for her in the future. Now, my crossbowmen have been one of my favorite parts of this army for a while now, and with the new D&D CMF, they've gotten a pretty substantial upgrade. Their leader here now has the witch arms and legs. These two parts just go so well with this torso, so it was a no-brainer for my heavy crossbowmen. But I still need to get a few more of them to finish the other guys. My light crossbowmen, on the other hand, are basically the same as before, but this guy does have the arms from the dwarf CMF. And that brings me to the heavy cavalry, which I have finally given some weapons to. I gave them a mix of lances, spears, and swords, which I think makes sense for them. But I still do want to try out the Kopeshes because I think they'd fit in really nicely for my horsemen. The last two figures for my Ravens are these new guard type characters. They both use the covered snout helmet, I don't really know what to call it, and they also wear some breastplates. I also love the custom halberd here that I've made for this guy with the new double-bladed axe piece. The D&D CMF has really been a godsend for all medieval LEGO fans. I don't think there's a single series out there that has given us this many new pieces. Now, I know this video is already long enough, but let's now take a look at my mocks and collection of sets. First, we have my LEGO Medieval City. Right now, we've only got 2 modulars done, but I am planning out the next one that should hopefully come out at the end of this month. I've got a whole series of videos about this city if you're interested. I'll leave a link in the description to the playlist. Next up, we have a couple of Raven Knight mocks. This is my Raven Knight tower that I made a couple of months ago. I really loved this build, so I decided not to take it apart after making the video about it. Normally, I destroy all of my mocks after making a video about them so that I can kind of recoup those pieces. So if I keep a mock after I'm done, it means I really like it. I think at some point I'll incorporate this build into the modular city, but for now, I've just been displaying it next to the Lion Knight's castle. The other Raven mock is a siege tower that I made over a year ago now. I still really love this build, but the main reason I haven't destroyed it is because it was in one of the very first mock videos I ever made on this channel, so it'd feel kind of wrong to get rid of it. Next, we've got my Wolfpack hideout mock and Basil's tent from my Fright Night video. Both of these are really nice small builds, so I decided to keep them on display. Also, if you're wondering, I am trying to make a Wolfpack army. I just haven't been able to get any of the torsos. Every time I try to buy them, they go out of stock on Pick-a-Brick, so that's on me. Anyways, and then for the sets in my collection, I have recently decided to part out my Viking Village, Medieval Blacksmith, and Magisto's Workshop, so my collection of actual castle sets has dwindled quite a bit. But I still have my favorites, so let's take a look. This is the 3-in-1 rebrickable model, which is half set, half mock, but I wanted to include it here. It's just such a great mock, and I would really recommend you all try to build it before the 3-in-1 castle retires in a couple of months from now. It's such a great build and is honestly really worth it. Next, we've got the Sea Serpent and the Forest Hideout, which are just such great small sets that I would not dare part out. And finally, we have the main stars of the collection, which are always in the backgrounds of my videos, the Lion Knight's Castle and the Medieval Town Square. Now, I have been robbing both of these sets for a couple of pieces here and there, but I have placed an order to replace all those parts, don't worry. I've mainly just been taking the rounded pieces from the tops of the towers. It's a really useful piece, but I have ordered some more. And so that's the collection. I'm probably going to do like a whole LEGO room tour pretty soon, because I've really been cleaning up my collection and I'd really like to document where it stands at the end of 2024. So look out for that video, hopefully coming next month, but don't hold me to that. Again, I'd like to thank Surfshark for sponsoring this video. You can go to surfshark.com/goldfire to get an extra 4 months of Surfshark. And as always, thank you so much for watching.